Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Daily Crypto Byte. Today is Tuesday, August 7th, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. CJ Reichel. CJ, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing good, Monty. Thank you. Hope you're well, sir. A lot of interesting price action. Audius is up 94% today on news that they've partnered with TikTok. We'll get more into that. It's a music streaming platform similar to Spotify, but interesting to see Bitcoin bouncing off, the 45K level, now back up to 46K today as the traditional markets kind of open down. But we're going to get into those charts and more and go over some kind of macro viewpoints as well. But before we get into the Bitcoin charts, Monty, anything you'd like to share or anything on your mind?
No, I'm really excited to hear your take on the Bitcoin charts today, CJ, because, we really are at a critical point here. We're getting some positive price action, not putting in any like higher lows or anything like that. So, I'm curious to hear what you think. The volume's kind of been decreasing. So we're at a bit of a crossroads here. And after you're done talking about that, I would definitely like to talk about ETH as well, because that's been kind of cooling off over the last week. But I think that, we could get some price action perhaps this weekend if Bitcoin continues to rip. So without further ado, you want to hop into the charts and tell us what you're seeing in Bitcoin?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I'll just say straight away, I am getting a little bit more short-term bearish just because we're not really seeing follow through in the Bitcoin and ETH price. Like you mentioned, volume is decreasing from a bullish perspective. And when you look at a lot of the altcoins that are absolutely going parabolic and have actually made new all-time highs, things like Luna and a lot of the assets in the Solana ecosystem, it's kind of a warning signal. I think we saw the same thing earlier at our tops at around 65K, but let's get into it in more in depth and discuss. So I have the weekly chart with Bitcoin here highlighted. And the first thing I want to talk about are the primary differences between this market cycle and what we saw in 2017 and 2018, and try to answer the question, is this really a bull market? Are we going to rally to new all-time highs? What are the critical differences between now and then? And the first one that comes to mind very obviously is just these moving averages, the Williams alligator, one of our favorites. And we were never able to break above resistance on that back test of the moving averages in 2017 and 2018. However, we recently did that within the last few weeks, and these moving averages are not acting as resistance. They're actually starting to move up from a macro viewpoint and looking to experience a role reversal from previous resistance to now new support. We'll see if that comes to fruition if we do see some short-term profit taking down to maybe some lower levels. But I think that one is very interesting to discuss as well. Also, looking at the MACD, historically, we've seen these crossovers in the MACD act as pretty reliable bottom signals. Now, of course, we need to see the follow through, but the fact that we're starting to get a bullish flip on the histogram and a bullish cross on the MACD is pretty promising, because if we look throughout Bitcoin's history, I'll pull this up and scale it a little bit for you guys, but we did not have that in 2017 or 2018. We just had that bearish cross, and we really never recovered even throughout the neutral to sideways consolidation. Yet in the bear markets, when we began seeing these crosses, we got closer and closer to a bottom. And then, of course, our COVID black swan events, we had more crosses below the zero line, which ultimately led to further macro bullish price action. So I think that's another interesting oscillator that we can kind of look at to try to find an idea of where we are in the trend from a technical perspective. Last thing I want to mention in terms of technicals is this TSI being the true strength index. And a lot of times we do have bullish crossovers, or when we have bullish crossovers below the zero line, typically that leads to either a local bottom or new kind of bullish price action throughout the trend. We saw that as well throughout, kind of 2019 and 2020, leading up to the COVID black swan and then our future recovery. And as you can see now, if we get bullish price action that will continue, we'll likely get another bullish crossover just above that zero line. So some clear differences from a macro viewpoint in the weekly chart when compared to 2018 and what we saw in that bear market. The last thing that I do want to mention before going into some shorter term timeframes is that we really never had any assets, specifically in the altcoin market, that rallied to new all-time highs during the course of 2018 and 2019 in that bear market. Really, the only asset that sticks out to me and that I can remember off the top of my head that went to new all-time highs was Binance Coin. And that's because they were onboarding so many new users. They were growing exponentially after 2017 and 2018 that they were actually able to rally to new all-time highs. But now we've seen it in many assets. We've seen it in obviously Audius that I mentioned at the start of the show. We saw it in Axie Infinity, almost Solana. We saw it in Luna earlier. So we're seeing a lot of assets really take off. And I think people are still bullish overall. So that's something interesting and some takeaways and differences between kind of 2018 and what we're seeing now.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff, CJ. And I think that, your last point there, talking about how the other alts are ripping as well, I think that is definitely one of the, differentiating factors between what we're seeing now and between, a lot of other market cycles. And I want to start by taking a look at ETH because I think right now, this has just been such an interesting week, CJ, with the Ethereum improvement protocol that came out last week and just seeing how the markets kind of reacted to that. It's really been kind of perfect for alts in many ways, So we broke above here. When we started to retest this level here, alts were still performing well, but we weren't seeing that sort of parabolic price action. When people started taking profit on ETH over the last 4 days, that's when we've really seen some tremendous parabolic price action in a lot of the alts that CJ was just mentioning. And I think that as long as we kind of stay in this range here, alts can have a lot of freedom to run here. People aren't necessarily looking at ETH, I think, until it breaks back above this level. And in the meantime, this is kind of the room where the alts can play. I think that we've seen it already, like CJ mentioned, Luna, DOT, Serum, many others. And, it's more than just a technical aspect here. There's fundamental elements at play. With the Ethereum improvement protocol, some miners have migrated as well. CJ, you were talking earlier in the week about some assets that we used to mine way back in the day, like Raven Coin and even Vertcoin, which have seen a massive influx of miners coming onto their network, and have driven price up with their, just increased buy pressure. So it's been tremendously interesting to see kind of how the markets reacted to this strong run up, bit of consolidation here. It's just been tremendously bullish for the alts. And I think that until we break this, lower high or either break this, level at 3K right here, this is a very critical level. I don't think we're even, going to retest this level anytime soon. But, if we were to break below this level, perhaps a move back down to the moving average would be possible. I'm a bit concerned by this declining volume here, but the fact that we're still seeing positive price action, we're seeing a lot of assets, get overextended and start to cool down. I think that ETH kind of remains in this range for a little bit, and we continue to see some very positive price action across the boards in altcoins. But CJ, you mentioned Audius up 94% today. And this news from CoinDesk is, obviously the reason why TikTok picks streaming service Audius to power their new sounds library. And Audius is up 94% as a result. Any thoughts on this and what this means for the crypto market?
Yeah, absolutely. But first, just for the record, I didn't hold any of that Raven coin. That was mine back in the day. But it's tremendous. That was one thing that I did not see, admittedly. We saw mass migration from GPU miners going from ETH to ASIC resistant chains. And so that was a very interesting transition that I think I wrongfully underestimated. But nonetheless, back to Audius, there's a clear problem with Spotify in the streaming industry, and that's that artists don't get really paid for what they're worth. We have a lot of instances where artists or like fake artists on Spotify will have phone farms and will just keep repeating the views on certain songs. And so they get paid on that. But what that does for other artists, especially upcoming artists on Spotify, is that when they get paid relative to the amount of views or listens that other artists have. And so if you have all of these fake like phone farms essentially that are listening to music, but it's not actually individuals listening to it, then everybody's kind of holdings or their payment, it gets inflated, or it gets diluted, I should say. So that's a clear problem in the streaming industry, specifically with Spotify. And if there is any way to improve on that, I think there will get a lot of traction behind it. Audius is still a little bit early in their development, but it's very interesting to see that kind of come through as a potential opportunity. So that's one that's going to be on my watch list, and I'll be following the users on that network to see kind of how it grows coming into the near future. But what's your opinion on Audius and the recent price action we've seen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the price action is just absurd, but I mean that is massive, massive news, and I completely agree with you. You know, the way we currently license music, it isn't the most effective way to do it from the artist perspective, and that's what's great about Audius. You know, it's designed for the musician. It's not really designed for the consumer of music, and I think that's one thing that is really different from Audius and Spotify, Apple Music. They're about the artist. They're about making it easy to upload, making it easy to profit off your music, and making it easy to ensure that your music isn't used without your consent. So I think this is a great step forward for Audius. I think that people are, you know, like I said, just looking for innovations in music licensing. That was one reason why I was so initially bullish on the NFT space. You know, we had bands like Kings of Leon looking to license their albums using NFTs. I think that is a tremendous application of cryptocurrency. This is just one of the first examples of it, but I think going forward, we're going to see a lot more music licensed via the blockchain. So very cool to see.
Absolutely. So before we get to the Doge of the day, well, actually, this would be a good one to lead into. But I want to discuss. There's probably a lot of individuals in the audience who have made a lot of money in these last couple weeks and are still long-term bullish, but maybe want to prepare for a correction in the short term. So let's go over some kind of metrics about where could they take profit, or where is the optimal take profit, from our perspective. But before we get into that, would you like to lead off with a Doge of the day?
Yeah, well, you're spot on, CJ. You're spot on there. I think that's what's going to be most important in this next few days is realizing when to take profit. And I want to start by talking about a trade insight that I published last week, Polkadot. So these are trade insights that are only available to members of our community. They're sent out in email blasts. But I published this one on August 4th. And I think this is kind of a great example of what CJ was talking about, is looking for levels at which to take profit. So as you can see, I entered the position down here at about 1875, and my goal was to take profit at 2650. And the reason I chose this level is because of this 200 period SMA right here. Historically, what we see is either strong resistance or support at this level. I was encouraged by the fact that we broke above the smooth moving average and we're turning up, showing a strong negative divergence here. But looking for these sort of critical levels is a great indication of where you might want to possibly take some profit. And if we take a look at where DOT has kind of bounced in the last few days, as you can see, it basically, I don't have it on up right here, but it basically bounced off that level pretty perfectly here. Let me pull it up in our community. So as you can see, we bounced right off this level. I think that looking to these sort of critical levels is a great indication of when you should start taking profit. Last night, a lot of people were asking me, Monty, are you going to take profit? Are you going to exit at 2650? Or are you going to keep buying this thing because we're seeing some significant momentum? And I think it's really important to not get caught up in the moment of, the excitement of the crypto, the movement. I made a plan down here. I'm going to stick to that plan even when I'm up here. Not going to let the emotion of these last 5 days get to me. And yeah, I exited my position last night. I hope some of you did as well because, as you can see, we're kind of bouncing from this level here. So I think that's a great instance of what CJ is talking about, looking for these sort of critical levels to take profit and then just not getting greedy and being willing to exit your position, perhaps planning to re-enter if we break above this and set a new trend. But in the meantime, I'm more than happy to exit my position at a pretty hefty profit in just a 2-week period. So that was my update on my DOT trade insight there.
Any Doge of the day you'd like to lead into as well? Or are you just a little bit kind of cautious on the market right
Yeah,
now?
no, I'm definitely a little bit cautious right now, CJ. I think, you made some great points with Bitcoin and the traditional markets as well. I think that, now is not a time to be rushing into anything. I think, take a look across the board. A lot of assets are overextended. And what may happen is when we see some assets start to pull back, like Luna, like even Audius, that money may flow into some other, low cap assets. And my Doge of the day today, or it would have been my Doge of the day today. I was kind of looking at it last night. Was Link. The reason I like Link right now is for kind of what I'm looking for Dot to do as well before re-entering a position, right? That's because it's back above this 200 period SMA. And I talked about this last night. Even though we're seeing a TD sequential sell 9 here, I'm still kind of encouraged by the volume we saw yesterday, the volume we're starting to see today as well. I think as long as we can, put in a comparable amount of volume, this thing can continue to rip to the upside. But that being said, I still think right now is the time to kind of lay off the gas, wait a minute, and just see if Bitcoin can continue to climb, because I think if it can, that bodes very well for the overall market. So if I did have a Doge of the day today, CJ, it would be Link.
Thank you for that.
How about you, my friend? What have you been looking at?
Well, I want to discuss a concept here in terms of like a trailing stop and how to take profit, and a tool that I really like to use, and that is Bollinger Bands. And so I like to use the outer Bollinger Bands as trailing stops when we are in a specific trend. And the default metric on most Bollinger Bands is 2 standard deviations. You could keep it on 2 standard deviations, but I like to uh, use one that is most like clear to the trend or most applicable to the trend. So with Bitcoin in that case, I would move it down to 1 standard deviation, and I would look for instances where we, ride the trend above the outer band for a significant period of time. And then once we get, a bearish engulfing candle which closes very near or below that outer band after an incredible run, I would look for those areas to take profit, because even during the uptrends, even during trending markets in Bitcoin, we've seen these levels act as pretty optimal take profit points. And so that's what I would be watching for. There's definitely some assets that have gone truly parabolic, especially in the altcoin markets. So you may have to kind of tailor the standard deviations to that particular asset. And I'll go over that in a minute as well. But if we look here, we can see Bitcoin starting to just break into, the level. Of course, as our last one, we found support at that middle Bollinger Band. We may do something very similar. Nevertheless, I think it just does show a little bit of weakness in the overall trend, especially with kind of the declining bullish volume as well. But if we go to an asset like Luna that has just had a really parabolic run, if you were holding this asset, it's not showing any weakness. I wouldn't really enter this asset because the higher up it gets, ultimately, the more risky it becomes. But if we kind of modify this, and as you can see, like on the last run up, this would have been very optimal and tailored to an exit, because as soon as we got kind of a close below that outer band, we pretty much, corrected, and a lot was given back to the overall market. And I could see something similar happening, if the market is to kind of correct here. But since this asset has such a high volatile run, changing it to 2 standard deviations and looking for a close below that top outer band, specifically on a bearish engulfing candle, is something I would look to exit. That's one thing that has really helped over the years, and I like to kind of take with me. Looking at Serum, that's one of those assets as well. If I was in this, this would be my Doge of the day, mainly because of this massive spike in volume. Also, it's one of those assets that's in the Solana ecosystem, but it has not rallied to a new all-time high. So if this bull trend continues, I do see Serum continuing to perform very well. I would just be very cautious, and I would keep an eye on this outer Bollinger Band, 2 standard deviations, as a trailing stop. So with that being said, that is my Doge of the day, and those are my take profit tactics. So
Yeah, CJ, I just want to quickly say, the reason why I love that strategy so much is because it eliminates, the need for emotional trading. When you have those, hard set numbers like you do with the Bollinger Bands, and like you even just change the standard deviation depending on the parabolic, nature of the asset, it kind of removes the emotion from it. And sometimes it's very hard to take profit on an asset when it's ripping because you're imagining even more upside potential. But setting those, mathematical hard stops is so important and will save you a lot of money in this market. So thank you very much for sharing that. And before we wrap up today, there's just a few comments I want to address here in the chat. One from Aaron Hayden asking about Bit Farms, and then one from AGP asking about Silvergate. So yeah, Bitcoin related equities have been kind of selling off over the last 4 days as Bitcoin stagnates. We don't really have time to get to them today, but tomorrow we are going to be sitting down with the options oracle AJ Monty at market close, 3 p.m. Central. If you're a member of the crypto community, you already have access to that. An email will be going out either today or tomorrow. I'm not too sure for you to register. But during that, we will definitely grill him on some of the crypto related equities because I know he's been trading those. He's probably bearish on them, but we'll have to see what he thinks. And we'll definitely hit both Bitfarms, Silvergate, MicroStrategy, Riot, Mara, all the big ones, as well as some of your favorite crypto assets as well. So really looking forward to sitting down and talking with the Oracle tomorrow.
Yeah, we've done this before a couple times, but specifically this time is going to be interesting because AJ's forecasted a doomsday crash this Friday, the 21st. So that's going to be very interesting. And if it happens, you can't say you weren't warned. The Oracle is making his predictions, so it's going to be a good one. Really interested to hear his thoughts and collaborate in this crypto market, but. Just a reminder, if you're looking for a new crypto broker, make sure you check out Voyager. They offer 12% interest on Polkadot and 9% interest on USDC. If you hold more than 500 VGX tokens, you'll get a boost in the overall amount of interest that you get by 1%. So when you sign up for Voyager, make sure you use the code REBEL25 and they will give you $25 free in Bitcoin when you fund the account with over 100. And also, if you'd like more of these trade insights, similar to Monty's dot trade insight that he discussed earlier today, make sure you check out the link below at marketrebellion.com/crypto. You can try our trading room for just $1 for the first month to see how you like it. So please do that. We appreciate it, guys. And with that being said, I'll leave it with you, Monty.
Thank you guys all so much for watching. Like I said, that clash tomorrow with the options oracle should be a good one, so definitely check that out. If you're not yet a member, you can try it out for just $1, like CJ said, and you'll get access to that webinar and many more. So thank you guys so much for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow with another Daily Crypto Byte. Have a great rest of your day.